Welcome to Lesson 9 in Making It Meaningful Transition Assessment for Students who are Deaf and Lower Functioning, sponsored by the Texas Education Agency as well as Northern Illinois University. I'm Professor Greg Long. In this lesson, Lesson 9, we're going to be talking about facilitating follow-up. Up to this point, we've been talking about how we do the evaluation, how we think about things, but now in this first segment, want to talk about the idea of implementing recommendations. Now, if you're sitting there listening to this thinking, well, of course, I will tell you that there is an aspect of this. Well, of course you implement recommendations, but I can also tell you that oftentimes that doesn't happen. And yet what we know, and there's actually been some research on this, surprisingly, that we get far better outcomes when we implement the recommendations from reports than when we don't pay any attention to them. Now, that's very commonsensical, but I did want to emphasize that point of when we look at a report and we look at the recommendations, let's think about, what are we going to do with that? Because the ability to implement recommendations depends on a number of factors. I've got a couple of them that are identified here. The willingness of people to do this, the willingness of not only the student, but the family, any related professionals. If it's an outside trial in the real world, if you would, people involved there, are they willing to participate? Are they willing to help out? I can tell you that for many, many individuals with disabilities, and this is not just something for low functioning deaf, but for many, many people, the attitudes that they experience as far as getting accommodations put in place are some of the biggest barriers that are out there. So when we think of accommodations for this group, the individual, him or herself, is probably not going to be in a position to advocate for what they need, but that's where the educators, the family, the job coaches, and so forth help out and facilitate this. So it's not only finding the willingness of people to do this, but also, what are the resources? What can we pull in? Have had the advantage, for example, of, from a resource standpoint, having access to a job coach, both for my brother David, who is deaf and lower functioning, as well as my stepson Bryce, who has autism. Without the local resources that are there, neither one of them would have been at all successful in life. So the willingness of people to work, the resources that are available to them, and not only resources, but opportunities. Living in rural Arkansas, living in rural Illinois, so on and so forth, very limited opportunities for things outside of an immediate range of people Okay, so where you live makes a difference in terms of the range of opportunities. So we've got a number of factors there that do make a difference as we look at what kind of accommodations. Now, as it relates to students who are deaf and lower functioning, we would mention a couple of things, and I've somewhat artificially divided them into accommodations we would tend to consider high or higher tech versus ones that are a little bit lower tech, okay? And these are all, depending upon the individual, potentially appropriate for any student who is deaf and lower functioning. So I've got listed here, for example, a vibrating or visual type of alerting device. Think about the last time you went to a restaurant and you got in the queue and they gave you a little thing that you put in your pocket and it vibrates when your reservation is up. Well, that same kind of concept could be used to help the student transition between classes, could help them transition between different things on job, know when a time is up. So those are very simple kinds of things to find. Another type of higher technology would be the use of FM or looped systems. Now, those are only going to be valuable for those students who use hearing aids, because without a hearing aid, looping is irrelevant. FM system is irrelevant. And even with the loop or with the FM system, it's going to provide additional auditory input depending on the student's level of hearing loss, may or may not provide as much benefit as we might like. And then for those students who would be more hard of hearing than deaf, certainly the ability to use a telephone amplifier is built in on a number of devices at this point. You can increase the volume. Helpful thing to use. Other types of technology that we might think of as accommodations for these individuals, a smartphone. Okay, and you think, well, gosh, there's lots of parts of a smartphone that a person's not going to be able to use. And guess what? I'm nearly 59 years old, been using a smartphone for a lot of years, and yeah, there's a lot of features of my smartphone I don't use either. All right, but I do use it as a phone. Allows me to get online, simple text messaging, take some photos. Okay, well, guess what? I think those are many things that a lot of students who are deaf and low functioning could do as well. It could also be used as a smartphone as a communication aid as necessary. So there are a variety of ways of using technology, and I will admit that technology can get too complex right off the bat. It's one of the struggles I had, for example, with David and getting him communication. As I've said, we now have matching iMacs and we do FaceTime with each other. But when I tried to get him a phone that had a visual interface with it so we could chat that way, I could not find anything that was simple and direct enough for him to use. So technology, as we think about it, is important, but it has to be usable by the person within their skill set. Closed captioning I've got listed here. If you are someone who's deaf or a family member or a professional and this is your area of expertise, you know what I'm talking about here. Closed captioning is not nearly as prevalent as we'd like to see. It's certainly not very prevalent online. And you appreciate the strategies, the efforts that are being made right now to do automatic transcriptions. But again, if you're not aware of it, I would ask you to go to any YouTube video that has the little CC marker in it, but has it as automatic transcriptions, and then play that, and you'll find that they're roughly 60 to 70% accurate. So really the closed captioning needs to be in place ahead of time. And we have lots of research out there that for students in a variety of circumstances, whether they're students learning English as a second language, whether they're deaf, whether whatever, that captions help. And while it's a bit of a tangent, I'm currently doing research right now looking at the impact of captioned video within a college classroom, and our preliminary results based on 400 students would say that, you know what? Captions aren't just for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, that captions can make a big difference. We were able to demonstrate that students who saw captions of a basic TED Talk on climate change did significantly better than a similar group of students who saw the same video without captions. And so, part of thinking about technology is not only as it relates to the individual, but are there some side benefits? Can we think about it as kind of universal design, if you would? And then the final point on this slide is just the video phones, and I've talked about that we have the video relays, and that's hugely helpful. However, for many of these students, it might be a little abstract, and so the extent to which they can directly one-to-one have an interaction with the other person is huge. Like I said, when David used the relay, so call a relay operator calls me and vice versa, he was unable to handle that. It was always nice to hear from him, but it was always frustrating. Now that he has an iMac and I can say, hey, call me Wednesday night or call me Friday or whatever, phone rings, computer lights up, we talk, it's awesome, right? He learned how to do that. So strategies, look at what works and be flexible. Now, having talked about high tech, that's all well and good, but I will also tell you that I work with many individuals for whom money is an issue. Internet connectivity is an issue. Do some work with some people who are very low income. And, when you're talking about individuals who don't have much money, an internet system or a computer system or a smartphone, oh, that sounds great, but it's not realistic. So if we're thinking of lower tech, I've got a couple of things listed here. Create a picture book. Now, again, if you're the educator, you could certainly use a digital phone and take some pictures of things and feed them into a software program and create a picture book for someone to explain a process, explain a procedure, explain something. Very easy to do at this point. Another thing we do from, instruction is color coding. So if you're teaching someone how to, say, bus tables, for example, and there's one pot that's used for your rags, another pot that's used for sponges, another that's used for something else, you can color code those, just like you could color code ingredients in bottles. So that by color coding things, matching by colors versus matching or trying to figure out this name goes with this, color coding is a really helpful thing to do. Same thing with drawing, same thing even with simple notes. As I explained with David, for whatever reason, how he learned language, a simple note written to him might be, and in many cases is as effective, if not more so, than signing it to him because he was raised with an oral approach. Like I say, it didn't take well, but that's, if he has a strength, that's where his strength would be. And then the other thing, we've got the high tech, the lower tech, and then what we might call special services, things that we can put in place as accommodations. Some of the issues with these have to do with sustainability over time and money. So having an interpreter as an accommodation is wonderful. What we have found, however, is within the school setting, it's more or less likely that that could happen. In the community or employment settings, the availability of an ongoing interpreter is next to none. So how do you use the interpreter and in what settings? Note takers within the classroom can use this even for simple note taking, because obviously the students who are deaf aren't going to catch notes, but are there some simple ways of providing them with notes either before or after as a way of kind of summarizing some of the main ideas? Certainly schools, if they don't have the size to justify a specialist, a deaf ed specialist, may very well have itinerant teachers who can be used for resource information and otherwise helping to figure out what would be the best accommodations to use with these students. And then, to the extent you can, tutors. And I would even say with tutors, yes, it's great to have somebody who's a wonderful communicator, who's got a master's degree, all those other things. But this also may be an opportunity to involve family members, other related professionals, even potentially classmates, to see can we help share and otherwise instruct on this information. Another issue when we talk about accommodations here has to do with, obviously, can you modify the job? Are there things that, hey, this job requires all these tasks and there's only this one little component that requires the ability to hear? Can we modify it such that that's not an issue? Can we restructure the job? Can we change something about the job? For those of you, I don't have this on the slide, but for those of you who are interested in accommodations for people with disabilities, strongly recommend you check out the Job Accommodation Network. It's www.jan.org. And it's a government-sponsored site. And what's very cool about the site is, as an outsider or even as an individual with disability, you can go to the site, you can identify, here are the disabilities I'm looking at, here are the settings I'm dealing with, and it will come up with a list of suggested recommendations for you to consider. So that's the Job Accommodation Network, jan.org. Strongly recommend you take a look at that as a way of thinking about accommodations on the job. All right, in this next section, section 3, the final section of this lesson, talk a little bit about the idea of natural supports. I've mentioned that term a number of times throughout our lessons here, but want to be sure we're really clear. Because natural supports relate to what we might refer to as people factors. It's the ability to get along with others and have them available to support you. Because as we've talked about, attitudes are huge, experience and opportunities are huge. So when we think of natural supports, we're really looking at, are there things in a particular environment that can help, or in some cases hinder, student success? So part of it has to do with proximity. Are people close enough that we can interact? Or is the deaf student stuck off in some room or some environment where he or she's by himself? Are there people around to interact? Because certainly we all know that the more we interact with people, the greater the likelihood to get to know one another and potentially be a support. When we think about natural supports, we're going to be looking at not only proximity, but to what extent do people have any experience with deafness or what are their attitudes with regard to disability? Some people are really good about it. From my experience, I've taught disability awareness topics for the last 15, 20 years at this point. And many people have very limited experience. And in fact, I have one class that I teach called Disability in Society. It's a gen ed, it's a big class, 300 students in it. And I start every class off with an etiquette question. So if somebody has a guide dog, should you pet it? If someone stutters, is it polite to finish their words? It's not polite to pet the dog, it's not polite to finish their words. If someone is working with an interpreter, who do you look at? Okay. Now, the interesting thing on all of those is that if you have a disability background, the answers are very simple. But having taught this to thousands of students at this point, and at the end of the semester, they write me a reflection paper. The vast majority of students say in their reflection papers that, those etiquette questions were so helpful because I don't know what to do. I'm not a mean person, but I don't know what to do. So when we think of this, take that idea and apply it to our natural supports here. There are certainly going to be people in whatever environment we're wanting to have that student be successful in who will be open to interacting, supporting, and otherwise, being there as a benefit, but who may need to be brought along in the process a bit, who may need some encouragement to know what's the right thing and what's the wrong thing to do. Because we're really afraid to do the wrong thing, and yet by virtually just trying, you're generally on the right foot. So when we think about this idea of developing natural supports, because like I said, it's what makes students be successful in the long run. Because our interventions they last, but then we have to move on. Natural supports are what exist in that environment on the ongoing basis. So to do that, to identify that, to help build that into the plan, we're looking at, so what are the students' interests, characteristics, right? What are their skills? My stepson, Bryce, I said he has autism. He works 3 days a week and volunteers 2 days a week. In terms of his natural supports, he's been in one job that he's doing clerical. He's there 3 days a week, and he had a job coach for the first year of being there. Now the people in his environment have taken over, and they are there to assist him. They give him instructions, and the job that he's doing, clerical, fits with his skills. He would not be someone who would be handy or would enjoy going out and doing construction. His physique and his motor skills aren't there to be helpful in that. So understanding what he's comfortable with as well as his environment is huge. And to do that, you have to spend some time. This isn't something that you're going to get simply by reading a report. So I'm going to argue that, as developing natural supports, be out there with them, okay? Now, if we're talking about somebody who is much higher functioning, that might seem disempowering. That might seem like, well, I don't need my helper out there with me. But with these students and the communication barriers that they face, you really do have to be more active. And, so you're going to out there and observe the students. You're going to spend time with them. And I would even argue, as we're thinking about natural supports, please get to know family and friends. I mean, meet the students' parents, meet people who are important to him or her, because they can oftentimes be very crucial in being the natural supports themselves or helping you to identify them. Some examples of how we might look at natural supports in any situation, whether it's work or education, offer some basic sign language classes. Now, again, we're not necessarily saying set up a curriculum that goes from American Sign Language 1, 2, 3, 4, or entire finger spelling classes. But for most hearing people, and I'm being stereotypic here, I know that, but for most of us who are hearing, we don't talk with our hands very much. We're very constrained in how we do things. And learning sign language, even just the idea that you can communicate with gesture and pantomime, can be really, really critical for people. So that people aren't worried, did I make the sign for food or drink? Did I make it right? Or simply, can I do this? Can I pantomime? Will those things work? That's fine. And if you have the opportunity to establish a class, again, have the class be focused on the language, those interactions that are going to be most applicable to that environment. All right. So again, we're not creating a student who is so good in all types of communication, but instead we're saying, hey, right here, right now, what do they need to do? Other supports would just be not only the sign classes, the disability awareness education, as I mentioned, but participation in what goes on outside of work. Is there an opportunity? Are there parties? Are there luncheons? Are there things that people do after work or during lunch that the student who's deaf and low functioning could participate in? Because again, that's another part of how we develop friendships, how we develop those supports. And so any of those things I've mentioned, whether it's sign classes, awareness, increased use of gestures and pantomime, are just the idea of being friendly, inviting the person to participate. Those are all excellent examples of natural supports and would significantly enhance the person's likelihood of success in that environment. So in summary, in this rather short lesson, we really talked about the idea that, you've got to follow recommendations. When a report is written, implement the recommendations and assess them. Did they work? Are they what you need? Right? Because if you don't implement recommendations, what's the value of doing the testing? What's the value of doing the assessment? So work on implementation. And when you work on implementation, look at accommodations as they exist in a variety of different ways. So not only the higher tech things, which we all know about, the smartphones, the technology, the captioning, and so forth, but recognize that for many of the individuals that we're working with, they are not going to have access to those, or they will have limited access to them. So the idea of notes, color coding, the basic kinds of things, matching that we talked about with lower tech, those oftentimes are some of the best accommodations. Like I say, David's name tag. I'm deaf. Please get my attention if you want paper or plastic. As simple an accommodation as you could possibly make, and yet that ensured his success on that particular job. And then the final point on all this would be that when we're thinking of accommodations and success in any type of setting, you've got to, or if not got to, you certainly will have better outcomes if that individual has some natural supports around him or her, that there are people that know how to communicate, that otherwise are open to communicating, that want to be there and helpful. Those things are all part of a larger system of natural supports that make all this possible. And so with that, I will end this lesson, lesson 9, and move into lesson 10. Lesson 10 is a summary of the overall course. Thank you.